All right, I'm joined now by Brent, the head risk manager at DSI Sportsbook for this week's version of the Odds Report. Brent, how's it going today, man?
Doing awesome. Our handle's really good on the Super Bowl. Looks like the numbers kind of settled down in terms of the spread and total. So we're sitting in a good spot, just kind of waiting to see where this thing goes. It's got a lot of interesting action we'll talk about today.
Yeah, we definitely do, and we'll talk about a lot of things with side, total, and money line here for the Super Bowl. Then we'll do some general prop stuff, talk about a couple that are out there. Obviously, we'll have a prop segment, or at least some sharp action for the props on next week's show. But, Brent, what's going on with the game right now? What kind of spread are we looking at? What kind of total are we looking at?
Right now, I'm sitting, and again, it's pretty much market-wide. I think is 2.5 out there, which is where I am as well. Like the earliest opener of this number, I believe, had the Rams favored -1.5, so that was obviously out of whack. We talked last week, and I said, kind of the good thing heading into this Super Bowl is that no matter which of the four teams, the two teams advanced from the four teams last week, this line was going to be, I said it was probably going to open somewhere between 1 and 2. Looks like, the biggest place has opened up right away at the Rams -1.5, and it's obviously flip-flopped to New England -2.5. But I felt kind of comfortable that we're going to be kind of like somewhere below 3 or might have to hit 3 eventually. But it was going to be one of those numbers that in terms of risk management was probably going to be, easy to work with in terms of me, just my idea, thinking that the opener was going to be somewhere between 1 and 2. Total as well. Opened 57.5, 58, and it's kind of hovering right around there still. So it's the number obviously is ticked up on the side and did a flip-flop. We didn't get terribly burnt on that. So we're in a good spot, and it's really settled at the 2.5 mark.
Now, there have been some brick and mortars out in Vegas that have gone to 3. I think a couple of offshores have gone to 3 and then have come back down to 2.5 for the most part. Have you touched 3 at all? And do you envision going to 3 anytime soon?
No, I haven't yet. I mean, no, right off the bat, I will let your listeners know that we did take sharp money on this game, and it was on the Patriots at even money, plus 100. So basically, like, the money line they grabbed right away, not on the spread. Since that time, I have been pretty fortunate in terms of balancing most of my action at -2 and -2.5. But still, it just, this is one of the games where it's just really kind of running away in terms of the count being on the Patriots. We always talk about our bet counts on these games, the actual individual number of bets that have been placed. Right now, I'm at on the spread. I've got 85% of my bets on the Patriots. So that's just a massive count for a Super Bowl. Very, very one-sided. I think if you look back to last year, for example, the Eagles and Patriots was around 52% favoring the Eagles. I think that was. The year before that was around 60%. That was the Patriots and Falcons, so we needed the Falcons quite big there as well. So that was around 60%, just to give kind of an indication of how really, really way out of whack this number is. So 85% of my bet count is on New England, and talking money, I'm about 89% of my actual dollar volume on the Patriots as well. So I think this is pretty much industry-wide that the numbers, really getting out of hand this early on the Patriots. So I think this number is, it has ticked up to 3. I know I have seen some -3, -0.5 numbers out there as well. And I think, if you ask me where this number is going, I think here, personally, I'm probably going to hit 3. I'll probably start with 3 dog 15 and see what happens. I believe in Vegas there were some reports that they hit 3 and got sharp money on the +3 on the Rams right away. So I think this number, where it is now, it's not going to do anything other than get beat around. I think between 2.5 and 3. The sharp money, like I said, just a massive one-sided count on New England. Like I said, 85% of the bet count, 89% of my money. So industry-wide, I think it's in between 80 and 85% in terms of the number of tickets bet on New England. So to get anything back, it looks like we're going to have to go to 3. And again, I'm just kind of feeling things out right now. Since I went to 2.5, it's seen kind of trickles of buyback on the Rams, but not enough to hold me back from going to 3. And again, I think my first move, if and when I do that, will be 3 dog 15.
Well, and as you look at this game, and you mentioned, out in Vegas, a couple of those books went to 3, got hit with sharp money right away. Seems like you kind of have that expectation as well, where if you go to 3, you're probably going to get that sharp money at that point. So knowing that, I mean, are you as a sports book taking a position saying, you know what, I'm okay with public money loading up on the Patriots because based on what sharp minds seem to be thinking, the Rams are the right side here. So are you willing to take a little bit of a position and maybe be a little bit exposed?
Yeah, I think it's worth noting, too, that the sharp money that I did take earlier on the Patriots at even money, that was a guy. Again, it's very important that you kind of have a profile of your customers, obviously your sharp customers in particular. But the person who played that, the account that bet that, not the person, not that I know them personally, but the account that bet that game at even money is a guy who typically does buy back the other side. So I get the feeling that the sharp money out there just kind of I'm not going to say sharks circling the waters waiting for that 3, but I think this particular person, as soon as I get up to a juicy enough number, it may be, plus 125 or something like that, where he takes money back. But this is, a type of person who typically does buy back the other way, whether he does it on the money line to lock in a profit or to play the plus 3, I don't know. But I'm pretty sure I'll probably get buyback on that early sharp money that I took.
Well, and again, there are probably a lot of listeners going, okay, well, if you're 85-15 on ticket count, 89-11 on money, why wouldn't you just go to 3? And that's the reason why. I mean, because we've got, we still have well over a week until this game is played. And if you know that when you hit 3, sharp action is coming, there's really not a whole lot of incentive to go there yet.
Yeah, it is, very early, as you mentioned. And again, you just, like I said, it's just kind of a feeling you get that sharp money is kind of waiting out there to see what happens at 3 and see who goes to 3. Some of the, more public books, I guess you want to call it, who have gone to 3 are the type of books where they really limit their sharp action and don't take much back the other way. So they can get away with going to, 3 and having their squares lay the 3, whereas, us in the store, we're probably going to big bet back the other way if and when I do that. So I'm just kind of just waiting to see how it goes. Like I said, the bulk of my money did come at -2 and 2.5 so far on New England. So if I do get buyback at the plus 3, we're really not in a bad spot. So that's why when I talked about last week about thinking this number, opening up, somewhere between 1 and 2 was going to be decent for us, in that we probably weren't going to have anything risk in terms of being, a number that goes to 2.5 and close to 3.5 or anything like that.
Well, this is also a game, too, here where anybody interested in a Rams teaser, not really a plus EV play, because the total is so high here that, this is a higher variance type of game. So a teaser not going to be as effective in this type of matchup. So, Brent, let's talk about the total for this game here. As you mentioned, 58, 57.5, somewhere in there, down to 56.5 or 57. Is that a result of sharp action?
No, just, I think the number kind of is going to start ticking back up as well. Surprisingly, I guess I've actually got a higher wager count towards the under, which you kind of don't expect with these two teams there. But the count on the total is almost split 50-50. It's actually 53% of my ticket count is on the under, 47% on the over. So I've actually got more bets on the under. It wasn't sharp money, but kind of just surprising. There is the mostly 57s out there. I just get a feeling this number is going to tick back to 57.5. I will say though that we did take sharp money on the first half of this game on the total. That sharp money came on the under. That was under 28.5. So again, I know some other places opened up higher on this game. I think there were some 29s initially as well when this number was like 58.5. So fortunately, I don't have any risk at the 28.5. And for the first half too, I don't, put a handicapper hat on very often, but you just, you look at what New England did last week in terms of what their game plan is. They're very good out of the gate. They start quick, but they do attack on the ground. They like to hold the ball, and they kind of like set the pace that way. Last week, the first half went way under. We had sharp money that we talked about last week on the game that was over, and of course the first half went under, and the game went way over. So sharp money did come in under 28.5 in store. Again, there were some higher numbers out there, and I'm sitting right now. I have seen some 27.5 now, which is a really dramatic move from like 29 or 28.5 down to 27.5. When you go through that 28, I think at 28 you pretty much lose any value going on at the under if you're sitting at under 28 minus 120 like we are right here. So I just wouldn't want to. I'd rather sit on 28 instead of having the risk of landing 28 and paying the guys bet under 28.5 and then going 27.5 and have everyone jump on the over 27.5. So right now I'm just kind of sitting to where the market goes. There are some 27.5s out there. I'm 28 under minus 120, and the sharp money, like I said, came under 28.5.
And keep in mind for our listeners here, Patriots in their previous 8 Super Bowls with Belichick and Brady have scored 3, first quarter points, 3, and it happened last year against Philadelphia. So they do have problems out of the gate in the first quarter, and as I say that, they'll probably be up 14-0 after the first quarter. But keep that in mind that they have struggled coming out of the gate. So, Brent, let's talk a little bit about what we expect to see here going forward. As you mentioned, you think 3, probably the way that we're going to go for the spread. Total may inch back up a little bit. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that limits will increase next week. So where are you sitting now for limits, and then how does that timeline sort of progress as we get closer to kickoff?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we go higher limits than any other game. A couple of days leading up to the Super Bowl before that Sunday, we'll have basically, we'll take real high limits, almost like whatever you've got in your account. Basically, you can fire kind of that kind of ordeal. So we'll go very high. About 3 days leading up to the game, probably. We'll go, not quite half those, the unlimited basically. So we'll go big limits the week of the Super Bowl, and we're still right now. We're not quite overnight limits right now. We're higher than that. We've doubled our overnight limits right now. But again, the week of the game is when they really start to open up, and that's generally when you see some of the sharper money come in. And of course, day of the game is guys. If the numbers keeps ticking up and guys have been waiting, they'll fire big then. But again, we talked about where this number is in terms of the 2.5. I think we've seen. It's kind of the defense mechanism that we have, in that we have lower limits before, and this is basically why. I mean, you take a shot on on the Patriots at even money, and now you're looking at someone who wants to grab back on New England. So that's the defense mechanism we have in terms of going with lower limits, and you see this is a great example of how that plays out. So when we go to the week of the game, you can open those up. And again, people who, if we hit 3, then someone might say, okay, I don't think this number is going to hang around till 2 or 3 days before the game. So they fire right away, and that gets you back down to, say, a 2.5.
All right, so let's talk about the money line here, because I think the money line is always really interesting for the Super Bowl. As a general rule, you'll see a lot of people that, will want to take the points with the dog, play the favorite money line, because the favorite money line usually a depressed price from what it would usually be relative to the spread. But here, with a spread of 2.5, kind of takes some of that money line maneuvering out of the equation a little bit. Yeah,
I mean, this number, generally speaking, what we've seen in the playoffs is that the higher your comeback on the plus is, the more action you get on the dogs. We saw that, especially with when there was the conference finals and the division, championship games, all that kind of stuff going on with wild card stuff. We saw big action. We had real serious liability on the dogs in all those games when you're getting plus 200 to plus 240 and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, the action kind of is mitigated here in terms of where we're sitting are right now. Minus 140 we are, with a comeback of plus 120, and really the action on the money line it has been slightly one-sided towards New England. I'm looking at about 60% of my wager count being on New England, but that's not a bad spot. That's easily manageable for us. Like we said, the spread count is really the one that's dramatic for us.
All right, so let's talk about props. And, I'm sure that this can be a very difficult time of the year for you, trying to balance risk on all of the props that are out there, keeping an eye on everything that's going on, along with, obviously worrying about the side and total and money line for this game. So let's sort of talk about that process of managing risk, because, a lot of prop bets are going to be posted tonight and tomorrow, especially some of the individual player props if they're not up already. So let's take Tom Brady passing yards, for example. Let's say that the number is, just to make it easy, 300. So what do you do if you get action? I mean, are you moving that number to 302 yards, 305 yards, or are you looking to move the juice around on that over 300?
Yeah, when you start out, obviously, I mean, first off, when we post a number on most of these player props, we do try and leave stuff in half. So, a line like 300, unless they just by some act of God, Brady throws for exactly 300 yards. Again, we're just talking hypothetically here. So, you write the action and all that stuff on that number, and then you end up giving all the money back. So it's kind of like a waste for both the player and from our side in terms of the work involved. So we usually try and open up numbers, just as just something worth mentioning. We try to open a number on the half point. So you're looking at 300.5 yards, or a receiver is going to be 89.5 receiving yards, what have you. We always try to work with halves off the bat and kind of move increments of one off that. So from 300.5, if we had to move the number, we'd go the 301.5 or down to 299.5. Again, if you're assuming we open the number at minus 110, definitely use your juice first. I mean, going from 110, you just 5-cent increments as well. We don't have massive limits on props, so those also are actually going to be like lower limits leading up to the game, and the day of the game will open up for probably double what we have during the week. So you generally don't want to get too high a juice on these prop numbers, especially if you're open up minus 110 each way. So once you get to like minus 120, minus 125 max, because if you're taking money one side at minus 110, and then all of a sudden you've got to go up to minus 130, and you get money back the other way, well, you're paying plus 110, and you're taking minus 110, and you're just basically taking money out of one pocket and throwing it out the other pocket. So from there, generally you don't go above say minus 120, minus 125 on stuff like that. We try and move the number, break the number as much as possible. The higher numbers, obviously like 300, you're going like a full point at a time. If you're counting like the number of receptions, that kind of stuff, you do have to move in half points. You don't want to set up middle. So if your receiver's sitting there, say, over 4.5 receptions, you don't want to go straight to 5.5. So you do have to go to 5 and break that number in half point increments. But the bigger the number is, the more likely we are to move by like a yard at a time or even more.
Now, obviously, as we talked about, you've got some right now, and this should balance out, but right now you've got some side exposure with New England. 85% of the bets on New England. Does that creep into the prop betting market at all for you to where, maybe you kind of juice those New England props a little bit higher? Or, how does that work? Do you do anything in correlation with the spread or the total or the money line?
No, generally speaking, you don't. But that being stated, it's almost a given that whoever the MVP of the Super Bowl is going to come from the winning team of the Super Bowl. So you do kind of talk to your prop department and say, look, we're very one-sided in terms of our wager count in terms of who's going to win the Super Bowl and the spread. So you're most likely going to get more action on the winning team, that being the way that the public thinks is going to go in terms of the Patriots right now. If we were talking today, so we shade our price on the Patriot players a little bit. Yeah, most likely. And again, it's just because in all likelihood, your Super Bowl winning MVP is going to come from the winning team.
And of course, for our listeners out there, keep in mind that the last non-quarterback offensive player to win the MVP, Santonio Holmes, Super Bowl 43. In the meantime, you had Von Miller and Malcolm Smith, a couple of defensive players. Otherwise, it's been all quarterbacks. So keep that in mind as you look at the MVP prop market. But, Brent, how do you come up with these numbers for MVP? Everyone kind of has different numbers for Tom Brady, different numbers for Jared Goff, stuff like that. There is a formula, a method to this madness.
Yeah, well, you're right off that. It is absolute madness here with playoff props or the Super Bowl props. It is crazy. Generally speaking, I guess it's kind of everyone knows this, obviously, that your quarterbacks obviously garner the most action, the most attention, so that's why their prices are a bit lower, and you're basically going off key positions from there. I mean, you're talking your running backs for both teams and wide receivers for both teams. I guess Gronkowski would be the exception in terms of the tight ends. He's kind of a high-profile guy. But, you've got your running backs. And, again, I mean, Gurley is obviously the big guy for the Rams, although C.J. Anderson has got a lot of carries the last few weeks. But Patriots, you're looking at Michelle, you're looking at White, who catches the ball well out of the outfield or backfield. And then you're talking about, obviously, with, your big-name receivers and stuff like that, guys who are going to have big games. And then your prices on your defensive guys, obviously, are going to be quite high. In terms of how we work with, basically we just have a calculator basically setting in terms of what we want to hold in terms of our profit percentage on these props, and you just kind of juggle the numbers around until you get the right hold percentage. I mean, generally Super Bowl props, we do keep a lower hold percentage than we would in the regular season just because our volume is just so much greater.
Now, is this a thing where somebody comes in on Tom Brady, and you can find Tom Brady out there all over the place, but if DSI will say, you find Tom Brady minus 120. Somebody hits that, maybe you go to what, minus 140? Do you adjust all the other prices then, in concert with that?
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't move it that much on Brady, for example, just because you're looking at what your risk is at the time. So let's say that Brady's even money for sake of argument, and you take a nickel bet on Brady. So your risk on Brady is now $500. Now, if you go to someone like White, for example, whose odds are $2,500, and you take a $500 bet on him, your risk is suddenly $12.50. So there's $12,500. So you're talking about a $12,000 difference on a nickel bet between the two players. So you really have to. What we really look at is the payout and what our risk is. When a guy bets a nickel on Tom Brady even money, your risk is the nickel, which is not that big of a deal. If he bets a nickel on someone like James White at 25 to 1 or Gronkowski at 50 to 1, then all of a sudden you've got a decision to make in terms of what you move. Generally speaking, yeah, I mean we play around more in terms of upping the prices on the lower odds initially. Your risk in terms of the Super Bowl MVP and stuff like that, usually on the high prices, guys, people like to take a big shot on some of these numbers. Your sharp guys, just as a general rule, talking about what I've seen from Super Bowl props, is your sharp guys will generally find value in prices like that, whereas the public will want to have some fun and put a number down on, say, James White at 25 to 1 or Gurley at plus 1,600, whatever it is. They're looking for the bigger payoff, a bigger bang for their buck, whereas the sharp guys will find value in these numbers. They'll also find it's such a public-driven market, especially with the props, but even the game itself is very much driven by the public. So we talked last year, I think the same situation came up where sharps were finding value in numbers that were like minus 300 and minus 400 and stuff like that. And it's just the fact that if you're a public bettor and you're looking at these props, do you really want to risk a minus 350 or minus 400 to get $100 back in return? Not really. You're looking for the big bang for your buck, and also you get a little bit of bragging rights. I played that at plus 250. I played that at plus 350 or whatever. So if the sharp guys, if they see something where we've got a price out there, it's like say minus 300, which is like a 75% probability or break even point, and they think the number should be like minus 500. They're going to hit that number. They're going to find value there. Where as the public this time of year, when we have our full slate of props out, they're almost always taking back the plus money.
Yeah, it's something I'll always remember. One of my friends in the industry told me about the Super Bowl. He goes, "You want more minuses than pluses in the Super Bowl prop market." He said, it's just the way you want it to be, because those big ticket plus money prices, they're that high and that attractive for a reason. So, Brent, I guess just in general here, when would you expect another wave of action to come in on this game? Are we talking Monday, Tuesday? Are we talking, once all the props get posted, then maybe people kind of come around to looking at the spread as well? Just when do you think we see an additional wave of movement here?
There's no real injuries to be, worry about right now. So I think, right, looking ahead to the game itself, I think probably early next week is where you'll see a wave. You also have to understand that most of the public guys, they have to manage their bankroll. We're not talking about sharp guys who have a whole ton of bullets in their gun at this point in time and can fire away and still have a lot to play with basketball and hockey. We're in the All-Star break with hockey, but with college basketball and stuff like that. So it does come down to a question of money management as well in terms of managing your bankroll. So I think as you get closer to the game, that's why we see so much more action come up. People just don't want to bet like 10 days in advance unless they really think the number's going to move and find some value. So I think the next wave will probably be around Thursday, Friday next week. It's kind of like the hype is all going to kick in.
Well, ironically enough, we will talk to Brent again, record with him on Thursday night for our Friday show next week for our final odds report of the season. Brent, good luck with everything here over the next couple of weeks, and we'll talk to you again next Thursday.
Awesome. Thanks again for having me on, Adam.